Welcome to Believe It or Not, an Interfaith Grand River program. I'm your host, August Edelman, and I'm joined today by Stephen Jackson, who's the CEO of Anishinaabe Outreach. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Stephen.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate this.
So tell me a little bit about yourself. Who are you out in the world?
Well, I think I'm mostly these days just Anishinaabe Outreach. We're focused on developing a center of healing and a process for healing for Indigenous people. And I spend most of my waking hours doing that. And besides that, I do woodworking, I do painting and things like that.
Very cool. So tell me a bit about Anishinaabe Outreach then.
Anishinaabe Outreach was a small organization that delivered employment services. We've grown a lot since then. We have now 2 centers of healing. We have a farm in Breslau, but probably the most important thing is we have a learning management system and a lot of partnerships with some of Canada's largest corporations like IBM and Accenture, places like that, Manulife, that help us deliver outcomes for reserves, friendship centers, and we've branched more recently into urban centers and helping urban centers with their challenges.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So you're based in KW specifically?
Our head office is in KW. I think we're actually rapidly becoming a national organization.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Because all we do is partner with people. So we partner with reserves across Canada. We partnership with organizations across Canada. One of our partnerships is with YSSN, which is in York Region. They do mental health, of course, in York Region, but they also manage the distress and crisis lines.
Oh.
So what we've done is we've built a resource learning management system that teaches people how to heal themselves without needing a therapist. Basically, it's whatever a therapist could do, it does.
Wow.
And then we just simply partner with organizations like reserves or agencies, and we provide it to those organizations, and they use their resources and their staff to help their clients heal out of the shelter system.
So how did you get involved in this? What sort of motivated you to, I'm assuming you're one of the founders as CEO?
Well, I'm the CEO for Anishinaabe Outreach. I'm also the CEO and founder for the AO Nest, which is the platform that we use to help people heal.
Okay.
It was really easy. We were doing a tech mentoring program in partnership with Communitech and UCN, which is in Manitoba, north of the pass. And we were trying to help Indigenous people become, developers for the software industry. What we discovered was, and it really stems into reconciliation, right? What we discovered was, without healing, there is absolutely no capacity to learn, and there's also no capacity to be employed. And without employment and learning, there's also no capacity for relationships. But without those 3 things, how do you take care of yourself? How do you thrive?
Mm-hmm.
And we, at that moment in time, we took a step back and said, well, we had to look at the process that was in place, and it's a therapist-led process for Canada, for that's how you do mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And then we simply did the math on it. And we looked at, if we just wanted to help Indigenous people heal, what would that take? Well, it turns out there aren't enough therapists in Canada to help Indigenous people heal from intergenerational trauma.
Wow.
So we had to reverse engineer therapy and make it available via a software system. So all we did was we teach people a topic like, say, grief or ADHD or anxiety, trauma, gender-based violence, those types of things. We have videos, we teach it, and then we built a process through worksheets, and if you follow through the worksheets, you create the outcome that you're seeking, which isn't really that much different than the traditional therapy model, except that we took the therapist out of the model to make it accessible 24/7 to everybody.
How has it been received? Has it been positive?
Yes, it's been positive. I would say that mental health, and it's not even mental health, it's actually trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Trauma is the underlying factor that manifests as mental health challenges, right?
Yeah.
So if your trauma is unresolved, what typically happens is it manifests as mental health challenge. People in the shelter system or on reserves try to mask that trauma by self-medication.
Right.
Self-medication means street drugs. street drugs are these days predominantly opioids, which are addictive, but also deathly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not really the solution, because all they're trying to do is mask the pain. But the second you're addicted to something, it makes the rest of your life almost impossible, because shortly thereafter there's a potential to become homeless, and the second you're homeless, you're at risk of being incarcerated.
Right.
What we think of it as, and well, I'll take a step back for a second. We discovered early on, we just Googled it, anyone can Google it, just Google the number of people that are incarcerated that used to be in care, so wards of the Crown. Turns out more than 50% of people incarcerated today used to be wards of the Crown, and that's based on a 2000 stat, so it's probably like 60 or 70%. And then if you go and talk to all the other executive directors of the shelter system, what you will discover, they don't keep stats on this, but anecdotally they believe somewhere between 30 and 70% of their populations also used to be in care. What that really means is there is a pipeline that moves from kids in care who were traumatized somewhere along that process, who didn't have their mental health resolved. They end up at the back end of the system. But what that really means is you could stop all of that simply by partnering with kids in care.
Right.
Child witness protection, the early part of this, like youth shelter system. If we just help that population, they'll never make it to addiction, homelessness, or incarceration. And that's part of the process that we use. We're not just partnering with organizations and agencies, really across the province right now, but it'll soon be across Canada, because urban centers have either an addiction problem, a gender-based violence problem, or a homelessness problem. You read about that in the news. They don't really talk about the incarceration problem, but they do talk about those other three quite a bit. We built a resource that will stop that. In fact, our resource, probably by the March timeframe, will be able to be comprehensive enough to break the cycle of intergenerational trauma. And the second we do that, we can free up every Indigenous person from those 500 years of traumatizing history.
That's extraordinary. I mean, what an undertaking.
Think about it. Mental health is actually the solution that everyone needs, but no one has access to. One of our partnerships is actually IBM. We love IBM and the work they do with us and for us. They took our system and offered to one of our module sets in our web-based system delivers emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, there's two sides to that coin. The first side, of course, is becoming more emotionally intelligent. It really means you're just going to be more emotionally understanding of others and their needs. But the second side of it is it gives you resilience. Because if you're in tune, because every single emotion, if it's unresolved, becomes a mental health challenge for you. And so, like anxiety, for instance, is just simply fear, right? So it's those types of things. Grief becomes depression, those types of things. So what we've done is, and they had a breakthrough a couple of weeks ago, what they were able to do beyond turning the system that was initially designed to just deliver emotional intelligence as an app, they've managed to import the entire web-based system that we created into the app. What that means is there's going to be a therapist in every single person's pocket, whether it's on the web or whether it's on the cell phone. Another partnership of ours is Accenture, who we also love. They supported us quite a bit. I had a meeting with them probably 3 or 4 weeks ago now. Turns out they built a generative AI model, and they're starting to think about whether they want to incorporate that generative AI model into our web-based system, which means it'll be in the cell phone too. Can you imagine what the power of that would be if we actually had a therapist, which is an AI, advocate that helped you navigate the system and also gave you what's next, what you need next. It would help you solve your problems.
Yeah, so you said about navigating the system. I think of how complicated, the bureaucracy of things like, registering for disability support or, anything that needs a form, it
Yeah.
can get easily overwhelming, so anything that can
Very
help
much
you
so.
navigate that and navigate these systems that, um, yeah, so complicated. That sounds
It is.
amazing.
Well, we simplified it. We
Yeah.
made it easy. The other thing that we're doing, and now we're partnering with Corporate Canada because we're seeking their support to help us with reserves, of course. We're starting to begin partnerships with religion.
Mm.
Um, so tomorrow I have a meeting with the diocese in Hamilton, that's Catholic diocese. Actually, this afternoon I have a meeting with the United Church. And next month, I believe, I'll have a meeting with the Lutheran Church. What we're offering the churches is free access to our system. Not because we want to give them free access to the system because we want to heal churches. We want to offer them our system so that they can offer it to their communities. Mm-hmm. I believe that religion has lost its mission. And its mission in the beginning was healing. And somewhere along the way they stopped doing that. But I believe because they're the perfect location. We're sitting in a church right now. What does a church have? Well, a church has a bunch of retirees, and that's volunteers that could literally go out into and partner with community agencies. The church already partners with community agencies anyway. Can you imagine what the power would be if they were able to simply give mental health to all the partners that they want to partner with, what it would do for religion? And they could use their centers of healing, these things, and it would be basically in every single town in the country. Mm-hmm. Or, if we expand it a bit further, our country is only one of many countries that are experiencing the exact same problem set. Mm-hmm. Imagine if they took it beyond our borders into wherever they wish to move their ministries. Again, it's a center of healing.
That's quite a vision.
Well, it's a partnership. It's up to them to decide if they want to participate.
Yeah.
But they could, because
Yeah.
it would actually reinvigorate religion for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, and everywhere has churches, everywhere has places of worship. So, they can act as a kind of hub for
Absolutely.
Connection. Yeah.
And all they need is a tool that delivers mental health. Because with that resource, they can move people out of the shelter system and into employment. It's a perfect storm for any country, because it turns out all the large companies in that country actually want access to the people that we're healing, mm-hmm. because they're all equity deserving. Yeah. They're all Indigenous. And those populations have never actually penetrated the corporate job market to the extent that they want to. We've had various forms of DEI so equity, diversity, inclusivity, mm-hmm. of course, forever. And if you ask anyone in HR, where are we? The answer is nowhere. Or we're at 1% of where we want to be. Well, the reason for that is because the talent pool hasn't been created. But if you heal people, they will become that talent pool.
How does the access to this, like the therapy tools and the outreach you're doing, I'm assuming there's also kind of a connection around kind of like addressing some kind of very kind of practical inequities around things like access to education, access to affordable housing, stuff like that. Because I think at least to me, the mental health piece always goes with these sort of what are those called? The determination.
Self-determinants of health.
Yeah. So yeah. Is that part of the connection?
It will be part of the connection. However, it has to start with mental health, because without mental health, you literally can't educate. Yeah. You can't work and you can't relate. Mm-hmm. So until we solve that problem, we can't actually focus on the other problems. Right. The other problems will take care of themselves eventually, because the back end of our process is employment or helping people start businesses. Mm-hmm. We haven't even built that part of the process yet, because we don't need to. It's going to take us a year or two to get people moving through the systems. Mm-hmm. So what we're doing is we're partnering with organizations like Family and Children's Services and Child Witness and the shelter system in urban settings. And we're partnering with reserves, and we're simply, there's two components to this. You also can't heal until you yourself are healed.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't help any. So the analogy is really simple.
Yeah.
You know when you go on an airplane,
Yeah, yeah.
and the first thing they say to you, put your oxygen mask on before you help anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, save yourself first.
Yeah.
That's the analogy, right? And that's what we do. We offer our resource to the agency, and the churches will help them heal. And then from there, they will be able to help everyone else heal.
Right. Everyone gets their oxygen mask on first, and then they can start doing other things too.
Yeah, very much
Yeah.
so.
That's really
the
interesting.
other thing that we do is our system is actually, it was built to stop the process or break the cycle of intergenerational trauma, which is significant. But and it's Indigenous, because we believe that Indigenous is better than non-Indigenous. And that's not because I'm Indigenous. That's what other people say too. The psychologist says, well, Indigenous ways are better. Well, they are in this particular instance because they're holistic, whereas colonial medicine is Band-Aid solutions, and it's reactive versus proactive. And so I guess another analogy is if you have a blowtorch on your arm and you're getting burned and you try to put a Band-Aid on that because you're near a fire or something, what's it going to do? You have to remove the fire before you actually heal the wound, right?
Right.
So in this particular instance, what we do is we look at the whole family. So our entire system is designed not only to help the person, but it's to help everyone that's in that family circle support that person. And sometimes, if it's gender-based violence, we also have to help the person who's the perpetrator stop doing that and understand from emotional intelligence all the downstream impacts that are happening. Right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You speak so passionately about kind of the future of this project, and I can like visualize it as you're describing it, of all the ways like it can make that kind of change and spread. So tell me a little bit about how this connects. So you've talked a lot about collaboration and working with other institutions. Tell me a little bit like the community building aspect of this, because it sounds like that's part of what you're doing.
Yeah, very much so. So I should probably talk about reconciliation and define what I think of as, I initially had 3 pillars of reconciliation. More recently, I added a 4th pillar. And the way reconciliation was pretty much defined and created by the federal government, Chief Littlechild, the former, or the late Justice Murray St. Clair, it was defined pretty much as justice and healing, and it had a bunch of action items, right? And that's pretty much what religion believes as reconciliation and trying to achieve it. I think every single person has struggled with how do you operationalize that. People try to do action items, of course, and I would probably ask the question, which of those action items actually lead to healing anyone? Well, the answer is none of them do. They're action items. They're nice things to do, like land acknowledgement, nice thing to do. But does it heal anyone at all? I think the only thing that heals people is mental health. And if you don't have that, you'll never get to it. I guess the other concept is justice. And I don't know if you've ever been involved in the justice system or know anyone who has been involved seeking justice, right? I'm in a car accident, I lost an arm or a leg or whatever the case is. Where's the justice for that? Where's the justice for the loss of the building, whatever it is, right? And I just don't believe justice is possible. And if you're ever seeking justice, you will never get to healing because you're going to be frozen in the past seeking justice that never comes. So you will never get to healing. You're going to be traumatized with that. And if you're traumatized, well, that's the beginning of mental health for you, right? And so that's the original definition, I think, or understanding for reconciliation. I think a couple of years ago, Murray St. Clair, before he left, he talked about, actually it's really about healing and economic reconciliation. Because if I think about it, how do you make someone whole? Well, you help them heal, and then you give them a future. And the only future you can give them is helping them become economically reconciled. So for me, the definition actually is healing and economic reconciliation. Now, if we think back in colonial days, in the very beginning with King George, it was actually a partnership of equals. That was the premise behind colonialism, really, and Indigenous people. And that quickly shifted into what it is today, and reserves, all the other things that have taken place, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But if I want to help Indigenous people, all we have to do is start with healing, help create the outcomes for economic reconciliation. We have to rebuild family. We have to help. We have to help rebuild family. We have to help rebuild community. We have to give back or make available language, culture, all the social determinants of health, ceremony, those things, if that is of interest for the people. And the only way you can achieve that is through partnership of equals. I know churches or other organizations say, oh, well, we'll just give water over here, or we'll do this there. Well, the reality is, if you ever do a 4 or a 2, the outcome is always residential school. If you do something to someone or for someone, that's the outcome. Look at any 2s or 4s out there. However, the magic is with. If you do it with, in other words, in partnership, and if you let the Indigenous people lead that partnership, what you have is you have an opportunity to create outcomes that are, well, will create the goals that you care about. You just have to not try to take ownership of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you asked about families and communities. The process is designed to do that. It's designed to help rebuild families, because at its core, the system isn't healing a person, it's healing a family and teaching a family to work together, to everyone in that circle, because the circle isn't just family, it's friends too, right? It's sisters, brothers, community members. They're all part of that family circle. And if you help them all work towards the outcome, what you're really doing is you're rebuilding community.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's the option or the opportunity. So that, in fact, is the first pillar, helping Indigenous people heal. They become a talent pool, rebuild community, families, those types of things. The second pillar, and let's just say we were able to achieve that, and we have a tool to do that now. The second pillar is actually for corporate Canada, because there is massive discrimination and racism that takes place against Indigenous people. For instance, when I'm in stores, I get followed by security. I know who I am and who I talk to, and I find that ridiculous, but security literally follows me because of the way I look, right? I'm dressed up a bit more than normal, so maybe I don't look as good usually. But the second pillar is to help corporate Canada embrace that talent pool, because even if we heal them and make them job ready, it would make no difference if they get abused. So we have to provide emotional resilience, emotional intelligence to corporate Canada. We have to teach them how to embrace an Indigenous population or an equity population. And again, that's just emotional intelligence, right, with the managers and the staff members. We have to fix their processes a bit. The third pillar is actually just change management. The third pillar, and I thought that was enough in the beginning, but I was wrong. The third pillar is simply change management, and change management simply states you need to raise awareness with the entire population that you're trying to support. So it's 40 million Canadians, we just have to raise awareness. So really that's the processes of media, social media, religion. Those people can all aid in raising awareness. Sports teams can raise awareness with their venues or their brands. They can just simply support this. The fourth pillar is probably the most important pillar, and I came to that conclusion more recently. It's actually healing for everyone, because if you're not healed, you literally cannot help anyone. So if I think about hospitals who are in the business of healing people, if you're burnt out, depressed, grieving, whatever it is, are you productive? Mm-hmm. Are you missing things? do you care enough? Well, the answer is no, you don't, because you care too much about your personal problems, your personal things that are going on in your life. So how do you go that extra mile to help whoever it is you need to help? And so it's healing for everyone. So one of my newer partnerships is actually with insurance companies. We're looking at offering our resource to them to offer to corporate Canada as a way of, well, EAP isn't really all that effective. That's employee assistance programs. Mm-hmm. It's much more powerful if you just simply help people heal. And currently, I believe Canada has economists in Canada believe that we lose $53 billion annually. That's with a B, which is just a massive number of productivity. I saw something from the Conference Board of Canada a couple of days ago that says, on average, every worker loses $2,200, so $2,200 per year, because they have mental health days that they use. Mm-hmm. That's just a massive amount of money that's being lost that we could actually use to boost our economy, but also help Canada, right? Mm-hmm. So that's also part of our process.
You've covered so much. I guess sort of the only other thing I want to kind of ask you is about sort of what brought you to this?
What brought me to this? Failure, I suppose. Failures of the system. Failures probably of the government in helping Indigenous people. I think, well, let's go back to our numbers. I think there's like 10 million people that are currently trapped in the shelter system. And if you talk to the shelter system, what they will say is, we have supported 3 generations of families. There are doors and windows in, but there isn't a single door out. Mm. They're trapped. Not only are they trapped, but so are their children and their grandchildren. And to me, that's not a society that I want to live in. I think we have 500 years of intergenerational trauma. I think we need to stop that. Because, and I'm partnering with religion, of course, to do this. This is their mission also. They care. They also caused a lot of the harm. So I'm hoping they'll help me with this initiative. I hope they'll open their doors to us and so that we can heal society. Because again, the 4th pillar of reconciliation is healing for everyone. Because if we're healed, we'll support people differently. And we can take those. There's 10 million people that are locked up. If you count all the people in prison, reserves, children in care, all the shelter system, and the homeless population, and the addicts, it's a lot of people that we could actually heal out of those systems, which is a negative cost to GDP, and put them into employment opportunities, or they could start businesses. They could grow Canada. As you are probably aware because of the news, Canada tried to solve our workforce problem by immigrating millions and millions of people who we've also traumatized because literally they came from trauma anyway. And then we kind of just made them all homeless without having houses for them. So we need to help them heal too.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything sort of that you were sort of thinking, okay, I want to add this one thing, or there's something else I really want to include here?
Sure.
Yeah.
If organizations want to partner with us, we partner. If businesses want to partner with us because they want the talent pool or because they want to do philanthropy, we need that. We actually have no funding. If individuals want to donate to our organization, which is the charity Anishinaabe Outreach, that can be found at aocan.org, so aocan.org, there's a donate button. We would love that support, because with that support, we intend to heal the homeless population out of that system. We intend to heal the reserve population into prosperity. And through support of businesses and governments, we will be able to achieve that.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and telling us a bit about yourself and your project and this huge undertaking that you're a part of, and it's really just extraordinary. And thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on Believe It or Not.